Yeah, we're live. 7:15. We're close. We're right in there. We're right in there, right in the sweet spot. Today we're going to talk about I've got dyno results on 347 twin turbo small block Ford, and we ran that one carbureted, and we also ran it fuel injected. So we did lots of different things with that, which is very, very cool. And that allows me to talk about a cool thing or a couple of things. One is, and they're both cool. One is that we can talk about the dyno results, what we did NA, and then what we did at the boosted level stuff, which is very, very cool. This one was an intercooled twin turbo deal with the guys from Max Speeding had supplied two GT3582 turbos that we ran on this thing, and they worked well. But they only worked well after we fixed one of the things, and that one of those things was the wastegate. So if you take a look at the wastegate position, I should say. So if you take a look at the thumbnail photo, you'll see that, and I'm going to bring that up here so I can kind of see it. So you see we've got the turbo kit, as it were, consisted of what are essentially shorty headers with kind of an elbow on them and then a T3 turbo flange. And that's all well and good. That worked. The one complaint I would have about the way that this was configured, I know that they're trying to make it fit in, tight engine bays and stuff. And I'm not exactly sure what this twin turbo kit was designed for. But at any rate, I don't know if it would fit in a Mustang. I'd have to take a look and see. And maybe that's why they configured the wastegate position the way that they did, or its ease of, assembly or whatever. But it has a stainless steel header. All the spark plug wires are okay, except for one. The first two, going from the front to the back on this side, on the driver's side. The problem is that they're too close together, and it doesn't give a lot of room for the spark plug wire. Maybe if we did a different boot design rather than the typical 45 that you see on a 5-liter Ford, but they could have easily brought the tube out farther before they made the bend. It wouldn't have done anything to the way that they angled this into the turbo position. But the thing that and that's problematic, and it's problematic on a number of things. We see that on the LS stuff, except now that the new Holly/Hooker ones that are out, they're much, much better. And so I keep telling myself I want to get a set of those so we can run those instead of the other ones that we run, the DNA pieces, which tend to burn plug wires. But what I want to talk about on this particular photo is the wastegate position. And what we have is basically this is where all of the wastegate comes off of where all of the tubes merge together. You can call this the collector if it were. And then there's a tubing that comes off of the collector, off of that 4-into-1 merge section. And then we have the T3 flange mounted on it. The problem is that the wastegate for this setup, and there's obviously one on each side because this is a twin turbo setup, there's one on each side. And the wastegate the tubing is probably big enough, but it comes off at a 90-degree angle to the flow. And the problem is that it just didn't work. I mean, we're running a wastegate on each side. So we're running two wastegates on a twin turbo setup that was sub 1,000 horsepower on this thing with two GT3582s, the Max Speeding turbos that we had. They even had water-cooled center sections, but we did not run the water-cooled portions of these when we ran them on the dyno. But the problem is that this wouldn't control the boost. It just had an ever-rising boost curve. What we had to do was cut that wastegate off, put it in a new position in the bend, and then we even stepped up to wastegate. We tried adapting a different wastegate to what was there. So using the existing flange, we first tried making an adapter to go from that 2-bolt flange to the way that we run the Turbo Smart 45 millimeter hyper gates on there. So we made an adapter to go from this, which is, I think, a tile flange. And then that didn't work. And so we cut this flange off and then just put the flange on for the hyper gate, and that didn't work. And then we ended up just capping that and then running another gate, running the 45 millimeter hyper gates in another position on this manifold. And then once we did that, then we could have control of each of the turbos. And then we blew both of the turbos into a single air-to-air intercooler, in this case, not an air-to-water one that we normally use. We did an air-to-air, and then to begin with, we did it into a carbureted intake manifold with a funnel web intake manifold and our trusty blow-through CSU carburetor with the bonnet on it, and all that worked great. Then we also did it on an EFI combination, and then that also worked. All of that stuff worked out very well. This thing was a good 347 and had airflow research heads on it. And with the right combination of stuff in it, it made over 500 horsepower. When we ran it with a carburetor, it made less than that. It made 475 or 480 or so. And then when we ran it with boost on the carbureted combination, it made 858 at like, I think it was at 12 and a half pounds or so. 770 foot-pounds. So it did good, more than enough power. This, by the way, was not a production block. This was a Dart block. So this was a Dart SHP block. And like I said, airflow research heads, it had a 236 XFI camshaft in it and the airflow research 205 heads, which all that goes together, works very well. And then depending on if you want to put, more camshaft in it and stuff, you can certainly make more power than that. And then having the boost, those GT3582s will support more than 1,000 horsepower. And so we could obviously turn the boost up and make more power without any problem. We can run on the 85, especially in EFI trim, and it can certainly do that. But the thing that's important is for this discussion, obviously the turbo stuff is great. The dyno results are great. Having boost on anything, obviously great also. But the thing is the wastegate position in this case, suboptimal. And in this case, what the wastegate did is not allow us to control boost. So the boost would just go from the load in to whatever it was, and then just go to all of it. So we'd have a power curve that was just rising straight up way before we let off. It was way over 900 horsepower. So important safety tip, make sure that you have good wastegates, and not just good wastegates, because we did eventually put good wastegates on it, but then make sure that the wastegate, where you have the tubing for the wastegate, make sure that it's mounted not at a 90-degree angle. Make sure that it's ideally in the direction of the exhaust flow, and that it's big enough, and then the wastegate itself works, but also the tubing and the opening going to the wastegate has to work as well. Otherwise, you can create problems. And we used to see this, the very famous case of this from back in the day is running that the drag exhaust manifold that was real popular for all the Honda stuff. I'm just trying to get the thing to zoom in there. The drag manifold, which had an opening over kind of one port. It was a cast manifold, so it worked really good. And we ran them a bunch back in the day, but it had a 2-bolt small tile deal that we used to bolt on those, but it was only over one port. And so it did the same thing, just had a big rising boost curve. Now, if you wanted a rising boost curve and you could get it to work right, that's okay. If you want a rising boost curve, kind of like a centrifugal does, it's not exactly like a centrifugal because it comes up to a bigger amount to where the wastegate is supposed to open, and then it comes up all the way. So you have to make sure that you're running it in a RPM range where you don't go to all of it before you hurt something. So very, very important. So on the twin turbo setup, it worked really good. In fact, we ran that. I just did a story for the guys at Summit. We also did one on a 383 stroker LS single turbo on that one, blow through again, no intercooler on that one. Same kind of thing, good power, over 800 horsepower without any problem. And like that 347, we also ran that one fuel injected as well. So the turbo stuff, it's like a license of steel. It's so easy to make lots and lots of power with a boost thing. Having gone through, because before I ran any of the turbo stuff early on, when I was doing lots of dyno testing, I was doing it on my 5-liter Ford motor that came out of my Mustang. And we did all kinds of stuff. We did lots of camshafts, lots of intake manifolds, cylinder heads, all kinds of stuff. Did a lot of stuff with the Vortex supercharger because I had one. But then once you run a bunch of NA testing, you're like, okay, well, what if we, we're always talking about these little things that we want to do. What if we change put roller rockers on it? What if we put on a small block Ford, what if we put a 1.7 on just the intakes, or 1.7 just on the exhaust, or both of them? What if we change the push rod length? What if we put a spacer under the carburetor? All these little things. When you add boost, you're like, what if we just add another 30 or 40 horsepower by turning it up a pound or 2 pounds or 4 pounds, and let's make another 100. And then you get spoiled with that stuff, like this test of our weight wastegate position, and then twin turbos on a 347 that was already good with a block that we're not going to split, because all the 5-liter blocks they split. So we didn't have to worry about that. We had good heads on it. We had more than enough camshaft, and it had good intake manifolds. It was all ready to go, basically, to make like huge power. And it's just so easy to like make all of that power. But that's a double-edged sword. That's why we love boost so much, but that's also why it can easily create problems for lots of people, because when you turn it up, we always want to turn it up this much or this much more than we should. You know how that goes. So we're gonna start our poll. No biscuit polls today or tonight. Poll for tonight. Would you rather run a twin turbo? Would you rather run a twin turbo more? Would you No, that's not right. So I'm adjusting my poll. Who would? Nope, still not working. Would you rather run a twin turbo or a single turbo? No, here we go. I got it. All I needed was one word. Would you rather run twin turbo over a single turbo? Twins versus, single versus twin kind of thing. See what people have. We had problem with the internet today. They were working on stuff outside down the street, and it got problematic. But lucky I was able to get through the first one today without any problems. It's raining. I'm burning a piano. Wow. Pro Charge Mopar. Yeah, I'm not up late. It's only 7 something. A lot of force stored in the strings. Yeah, you don't want to. You can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. You can burn a piano, but you can't burn a fish. Is that the same thing? I broke down first. Don't worry. Also, the heat would probably lax all the strings before it would weaken the cast harp thing. Okay. South side of Puerto Rico. What's going on? Home of Salinas Speedway. Very cool. Sergeant Steel Dog. What's up, Sarge? Jerry Lee Lewis. He did used to light him on fire. That's right. Richard, I bought leveling shocks for my dad's truck, thinking it would need them since it had a level kit. Of course, I realized this was a goof. I now have a double leveling kit. So are they trying to fight each other now? Are they trying to adjust and see who's the boss of leveling? Lebanon Valley Dragway, what's up? Shout out to Lebanon Valley. Hello, Richard talks turbo stuff. Stock for stock, I think LS is better, but man, you can't beat the sound of a small block Ford. Yeah, I mean it's easier to make a power from a stock LS than it is from a stock Mustang or 5-liter or even a 351, but still you can make power from both of them. Gold Beach, Oregon, what's going on? Small block Ford does sound good. I like the 351 at 8,000 RPM video on YouTube. That's a lot of RPM for a 351. Steve, you had a stock bottom end 302, cast Windsor heads, ECAM and trick flow, track heat intake go 1030s. So if it went 1030s, how much nitrous were you running, or how much boost were you running? 7275, a pair of 7275s. Okay, that makes sense. PT, okay. I was gonna say that combination is not that's not a 10-second combo. Maybe if you're putting it in a 1,500-pound car or something. Live long and prosper. Green Bass is my 300, a smaller big block. Is it a 300 inline six-cylinder? I need one of those. I need the EFI one. Live long and Bitcoin is going crazy, hoping for big downward correction before takeoff. So if it downward corrects, that's when I need to get in. Actually, I think if you're looking to invest in something, you need to invest in beef right now because they had all the problems in Texas, and the price of beef is going to go way up because they killed all the cattle. That's what I was told. Yeah, Super Comp C4 converter spooled brace 8.8. Cool. Let's see. At 420 horsepower plus or minus 69 horsepower, that's when they split. It's a big swing, right? You need to try 11 at least once. I'm not computer savvy. Turbos would be great, but NOS wet kit is a lot of boost. Yeah, that does help. That's why I did the video or the story that I did for Summit, because we want to show that you can run these on carburetors too. We had the CSU carburetor, which makes life kind of easy. 2 turbos per cylinder. That's a lot. Judge, that's what you voted was it depends. I don't see the it depends selection up there, but that's good. How to run a compound twin turbo. Okay. Well, it just says 2, so you could run it compound, you run it sequential, you run it parallel, whatever you want to do. If money wasn't an option, definitely twin turbos, but on a swap that I'm working on now, it's not impossible, but it would be complicate a lot of things. Some, usually we talk about it's just fitment more often than not, because you can get what you need to get at any kind of reasonable power level with a single turbo. It just looks cooler with 2 of them. Got the hybrid Silverado in the shop, taking the interior out now. Time to dehybrid. Good luck, man. Francisco, what's going on? Cheapskate will mount 2 extra 7.3 Power Stroke turbos, no computer descendant. There you go. So what are you gonna mount those on? What was that motor I saw which had each exhaust runner split going to 2 turbos? You'd need a lot of exhaust flow to split it and run a single exhaust port out to 2 turbos. Turbo 340, like a 340 Dodge. The turbo works on any motor, it doesn't care. Currently building a Chrysler 300 with a Mustang 5-liter twin turbo, and since they don't come with stick shift, also installing a Tremec. Very cool. You're swapping a 5-liter twin turbo into a Chrysler 300? That's got to be unique, right? Is it a 5-liter Coyote or the OG 5-liter? The 1250 Dominator would be a good blow through to convert for my for my 560. Sure. I have seen blow through Dominators. I think Kevin did a couple of those. I know Mike Miller had one on some high horsepower jet or race boat motors that he did. Walking red flag. I prefer single turbo over twin simply because it's less mechanical parts with the potential to break and cause failure. More turbos equals more potential hazards if not regularly inspected. LS turbo for street use, solid lift or camera hydraulic. If it's an LS motor, you just run a hydraulic roller. There's nothing you can't do with a hydraulic roller, especially on any kind of street motor. Can I ask if you guys were going to build, like, say, what car suspension would you use and what engine combo for like 8th mile racing? Did anybody want to address that? A Fox Mustang with an LS swap in it is a good combination. Have you done a VTR Gen 5 Stage 2 turbo cam on an N8? Do they make a Gen 5 turbo cam for an L83? I didn't even know that they made that. So the answer is I've never tested one. I have the dyno data from a lot of their L83 cam testing when they were doing development, but I didn't know that they had a turbo cam. And actually, every cam that they tested was a turbo cam because every cam is a turbo cam. I know I'm the odd one out, but is a daily driver equipped with a stall converter unpleasant? No, it's not. If you have a higher stall speed, actually, it's going to be a lot funner. Overbuilt, what's up? Factory twin turbo, yes. Aftermarket twin turbo, no thanks. Okay. Why do factory turbo 4 cylinders make 350 horsepower but blow up? What motors blow up? We've got a guy that brings the Turbo Civic Type R in, and it makes a lot of power. It makes that at the tire, and it doesn't blow up. This one was a dart block. Never turned a wrench, but I'm about to be done building my first Turbo 408. Congratulations, 2000 GMC Sierra. Let us know, Dylan. Let us know when you're done driving it, or when it's up and running and stuff. I always like to hear about that stuff. And LS Fairmont is also good. That's fine. It's not a yes or no answer as asked. So, Steve, do you need a hug or something? Is that why everybody else is understanding what it is and answering it, and you're the only one that's not? John, LS's and Mustangs are an abomination. Then you shouldn't put one in yours. That's all that it is. Lots of people putting LS's in Mustangs. Ford EcoBoost. Looking into more low-end torque, and my 250 700 R4 combo stays in 2 and 3. Is it a 250 small block Chevy or 250 Ford? What is it? Greetings, guys and gals. Twins or single, doesn't matter to me. Whatever's easiest, cheapest to get it done. There you go. My belief is that most factory turbo setups blow up because people cranking the boost up recklessly, bad tunes. I mean, that's certainly possible, but I think back on all the factory forced induction cars that have ever come out of the factory and all of the crazy stuff that people did with them. I didn't think that was really a problem. I think more people had success than not. Four-way turbo, single turbo, almost ready for the Ranger. That'll be good. Turbo 400 Ford. Yeah, that would be a torquey thing. I'm building a 4145 by 4375 cathedral port with 2 foot. How did you come across those displacements? With a 245 that flows 336 CFM with 9.6 to 1, with a 645, 209, 217. I don't think you're going to make 650 foot-pounds at 3,000 RPM. That's a lot. So 4145, 4375. It's 472 inches. I still don't think at 3,000 RPM. I'll take a look back and see where. I don't think we ever ran it down at 3,000 on the 5 or 495 that I did. Take a look back at our dyno results. Rec port, stroker. The 468, I'm sure, did not do it. It had 600 at 3,500 on the load in, but that was 495 inches and it was 12 to 1 or 12 and a half to 1. Where's the mast one? Because the mast one, I think we ran with a one of these. I know we ran with a 608. Maybe that 468. I ran with a fast intake manifold. So here we go. Yeah, the 468 at 3,500 was 545, and that was with a fast manifold. So with that single plane, I'm pretty sure it's going to be less. Yeah, 529 with a. So I think that's going to be hard to do. I would say that that's probably not going to happen. Even with a 209 cam, I think you're going to find out that it's going to want more camshaft than that, even at 3,000 RPM. Gen 5 stage 2 is a 221, 230 something. Okay. One turbo can be more efficient than two turbos. Depends on the turbos that you pick. It's a good compression ratio for street single turbo 351, streetable cam for a build. 9 to 1 is fine. Are you going to be running it on pump gas? 250 inline 664 C10 has one turbo on it. I have a 434 Windsor 240s high ports forced induction 94 millimeter 11 to 1 E85 Q16. What size can would you run with 30 pounds of boost? What intake manifold do you have on there? And if it's a 94 millimeter turbo, how much power are you trying to make? Because 30 pounds of boost, 434, 6, 12. That's are you trying to make 2,000 horsepower with that? Performance aftermarket twin turbos on any engine is very aggressive for street driving. No, a single turbo or a twin turbo both will do the same thing. If you size them right, you won't be able to tell that one's a twin and one's a single. They'll do exactly the same thing. You just have to size the turbos to do the thing that you want them to do. Richard, your numbers seem to run amok with electrical people. Which ones? The horsepower numbers generated by the dyno? Oh, Clinton Township. Probably going ITBs with long stacks. That should help. Was there something before that, JK? Or was that your first, just like right out of the gate, was that your first comment? I didn't see anything back farther than that. Isn't the cam is most important if it runs out at 8,000 RPM, then nothing after that worth is spinning up? No, the cam is one thing, but if you have you can put as much cam in it as you want, but if you have a long runner intake manifold, it's never going to make power at 8,000 RPM. Let's figure out how to run Crazy Boost with a fuel that supports it. I don't look at boost. I look at power. So 1,500 doesn't take Crazy Boost. It's only 29. Factory injectors, I think, are 24s, I think. Less than 400. Would dry sump with external oil pump make turbo live longer? Well, here's the thing to think about. On factory turbo things like the 2.2 liter Dodges and the 2.5 liter Dodges, those turbos last a really, really long time from the factory, partially in those applications because they were water cooled. So if they're water cooled turbos, I don't know how a dry sump is going to help that, because I don't think you ever starve the turbo for oil. Yeah, Darth, make it be 9-1 if it's on pump gas. I would put a big cam in that 434. If it's going to be a race motor, then and you're trying to make lots of power, you could put I don't know if they've got a stage 4 turbo cam, but the stage 4 LS3 cam would work. Yeah, John, that 15-1 is not turbo friendly, probably. Darth, a factory crank will make easily 500. We've made way more than double that with them. When are you revealing the twin turbo 2.2? Is that a thing? I just can't get my head around how much bigger the China GT45 is compared to the 7875. Are you sure about that? I don't think that's true. Do you have detonation problems with the turbo? Would E85 help? Yes. James, what's going on? Subaru made a twin turbo 2-liter. I mean, anything's possible. It's not hard to do. You just have to have turbos that are small enough to do that what you want it to do on a 4-cylinder. It would just be cool. I mean, where are we at? 51.49 on our poll. Would you rather run a twin turbo over a single turbo? Just 1% wanting the twin. Azim, either one of those will work. Obviously, the LC9 block will. It's not going to make it's not going to be as responsive as the 6-liter is, but you will lose weight on it. I don't know if you're. Do you have I'm sure you have a 2-step and a converter and all that stuff, so that getting it up to making the power that you need to launch it won't be a problem. Going down from a 6-liter to a 5.3, you definitely will lose weight. Just make sure the oil return lines have an easy path back to the oil pan. Yeah, and all the factory stuff, all that's thought out. My Ross pistons have top holes around it to the top ring. Gas bore Speedmaster 351 block. I just made 1300. Yeah, we've made lots of power with those blocks. We just had to make sure that all the things were right on it. GT45 weighs 15 pounds more than a 7875. I'm curious. Now I want to measure those and see. I have a 7875 Gen 2. I don't know if the one you're talking about is that tube. Super was a twin turbo. Yep. So was the little RX-7, the Gen 3s. I'm trying to figure out what turbo to run on my 4.8. Well, just pick the turbo based on your power level that you want. So James, you go twin turbo on a big lock as long as there's room. That's usually the deciding factor is will it fit. Butcher of a 5.9 Magnum, 2500, and everything ready to go. Yet I can't decide to go single or twins. Don't need more than 450 or 500 horsepower and hopefully pump gas. Yeah, on 500 horsepower, I think I would. Well, I wish there was something right below a GT45 and something bigger than a GT35. But don't they make a T4 version of the GT3582? If they do have a T4 version of that, I would use that. Would a 42-pound injectors be enough to handle my 351 turbo? Times 0.85. So 42 times 16 equals 672 times 0.85. It depends on how much power you want to make. 570 flywheel horsepower is what is kind of where they'll be, as long as you're not running E85. If you're running E85, you need way bigger injectors. Most people put 80 pounders in it. It just makes life a lot easier. They're inexpensive, and you can get those, and you're gonna have to tune it anyway. So you might as well have more than you need, so you're not trying to max out the injector when you're running it. If I have a small block Chevy that stays at low RPMs, would increasing port volume but decreasing combustion chamber size effectively raise my compression while raising the low RPM power? No, it would do the one of those things is improving low speed power because it's improving power everywhere. Compression raises power everywhere. Increasing port volume is the wrong way to go. If you're interested in low speed power, theoretically, you would make the port smaller or leave it alone. Unless you can get a lot of flow with by porting with a very minimal change in port volume, that would be ideal. No, John, I think gas ported are a good idea as long as the gas ported piston and the ring package work together. Have you used the aluminum Speedmaster block? I think I'd have to go back and look. I think we have. I think we did use an aluminum one on something. I can't remember. I don't know if it was a 351 though. Chris Moore has a twin turbo GSXR. I wonder where he got twins that are that small. I noticed most heads flow. Is that supposed to be most? I don't know what mist is. Is it most effective at around 500 lift? That's not true unless you're talking about some sort of specific factory head at 500 lift. But you don't need to match the cam to the lift in the head. That's a myth. Max Speeding Rods makes a T4 GT 3582. Okay. I thought that they did. Richard, have you ever built a turbo kit with a standalone closed circuit oiling system? No, I have always used the oiling from the engine for that. You could have its own tank and pump and cooler, I guess, for that if you wanted to have. Seems an awful lot like it's more expense and complexity, but you certainly could do that. You'd make bigger torque gains with long runner intakes rather than making big ports. Yeah, big ports is the wrong way to go. Long runner intakes is a good way to go, but sometimes it's hard to make an intake manifold. Have you built a 387 stroker? A 387 stroker what? The answer is going to be no for a Ford or an LS. I have built 393 strokers, and maybe they were even smaller than that when we did a standard bore on it. Could increasing velocity be achieved by lowering combustion chamber size? No, you're not going to increase. You're not really going to increase velocity. You're going to increase compression by combustion chamber size. In fact, you may increase velocity by unshrouding the valve because you're improving the flow without changing the port cross section. But you're theoretically making the chamber bigger by doing that. But you could have a net gain from doing that. Oh, Ivan, let us know what's going on, man. Let us know if everything's okay. I raced the CBR 600. My single turbo Fox body walked him. I'm foggy on, is there any advantage of running two 500 horsepower turbos over 1,000 horsepower turbo? There's not. Like I said, the choice between single and twins, if you're sizing them correctly to both do the same thing, meaning to get the power that you want, they'll be very, very similar in what they provide. And you do get to tell people you have twin turbos. It just rolls off the tongue better. Azim, you were very close, but you used a bad word in there. What spools faster, single or twins? Again, is it one small single and two big twins, or is it the opposite of that? Or the spool rate is turbo sizing and not the number of turbos. Do you think it's beneficial to run the stock intake runner size with a smaller combustion chamber and increasing the intake and exhaust valves for better flow for a mild small block? Why this would be better rather than you trying to nitpick each little thing. Just tell us how much power you want to make, and I'll tell you how to get there, because I'm sure I put together a combination that did what you wanted to do. You're worrying about little things, and you shouldn't be worrying about little things. You should be worrying about the other things that actually make big differences in power. So sequential will spin up quicker. Yeah, if you can plumb all the exhaust to one turbo and then to two of them, that's a better way to go in terms of spool. And then you could also do it as compounds, as somebody's pointing out, which I have videos on that. I don't have, but I will this year. I'm going to do a sequential setup. Not because it needs it, just because it's cool. That way, just kind of open a valve, I guess, and bring the second turbo online. That'd be cool. I run a single 91 millimeter on a stock block, 6 liter. And can darn near double bulb. Is that a drag racing Lango that you're like quick on the light or something? What cam would you recommend for a 351 Windsor with the Holley high ram GT40 style heads? 9-to-1 running 7 pounds boost. Would this be streetable without a big stall? Well, you get to pick the cam, so you get to decide what's streetable. The high ram is going to be a little bit less streetable than the long runner 351 Windsor stuff, but you can still make it, be a good combination. The heads are a little restrictive, but so I don't really think you need that intake with those heads. But if all that's put together, you could put I don't know, you could put that 274 cam in it, or you could put a 268 cam in it, and it would be good on the street. Have you ever tried a 6.385 rod? I have run big blocks with 6.385 rods, but I've never compared it to anything with a different rod because I honestly don't think rod ratio makes a big difference. Hits the rev limiter in 2.5 seconds. Okay. I have a twin compound setup in my Suburban. Yeah, I like the 460 buildups. Those are good. Have you ever done a video on cast versus hyperprotective versus forge? Would you say ringland thickness is more important than material type? No, I wouldn't pick one of those over the other. I wouldn't say only one thing is important and the other things aren't important. What I would say is if you take a look at what we've done with factory cast pistons in an LS, 1500 plus horsepower, people that are looking at the material strength, 99% of those people are going to break it doing something else. It has nothing to do with the material strength. We got to the material strength because we had the right tune in it. We had the right air temperature and stuff in it. I still think there's more there, but ultimately I would rather have, more piston crown down to the first ringland. But if I was building a lot of power, I would rather have it as a forged piston. Is an AFR-205 head and Super Victor on a 357 good for a turbo 80 millimeter? A Super Victor, in my opinion, is not, unless you're, a Super Victor dictates is going to dictate where you want to run power. And so you're not interested in power at 2000 RPM on that combination. You're interested in power somewhere else. So the intake manifold is going to make power somewhere else because it's a single plane manifold. Space. I don't know what the most horsepower you can make on 93. Are you talking about on a turbo or on the NA one? The stock internals don't make any difference. You would need to put, if you're talking about putting a ported head and ported intake manifold and a cam and stuff in there, you can make pretty good power, especially on 93. My LS427 came with a comp cams 238, 242. Was recommended for my twin turbo setup. Anything to be concerned about this? No, it's a good sized cam, but you have a 427, so it's fine. You could make more power down low with a smaller cam, but do you want to do that? And so, if it does the thing that you want it to do, then it's the right cam. And if it doesn't do that, then it's not. $3,500 and higher with a Super Victor. Yeah. Super Victor is a good intake manifold. It's better than the Victor Jr. I watched an Alice head on the 351. I've seen that. I haven't seen them run it on the dyno or anything, though. The No Prep Kings are coming to your area. I have 6 months to get my twin charge big block project ready for the track. Cool. Got 2 more minutes. I'm going to close out our poll at 50. Oh, see, the yeses did a little comeback there. 55% saying they want the twins. Everything's better as twins, right? Why is a Super Victor better than a Victor Jr.? Every Super Victor that I've ever tried, I've compared to a Victor Jr. The Super Victor has always made more power. On the LS, on the big block, on the small block Ford, on the small block Chevy. You should team up with Ford Racing to do what? Is it true that Ford's pistons don't expand as much when warm, allowing you to run tighter tolerances, or that is a rumor? It's actually the reverse of that. The cast pistons don't expand as much because of their metallurgy. You usually have to run more clearances with a Ford's piston. Get some no prep racing. Good. What's your personal preference? Bigger motor, more average torque, or smaller, higher revving? It depends on what you're trying to do. Like I'm building a really small motor for Bonneville. It's a 1 liter, but that's only because that's what the class dictates. If they would let me run an 800-inch motor, then to do what I need to do, that'd be a lot easier. Rick, yeah, you could put 2 GT45s on that, and that would get you to 1,500 horsepower. So you get more than enough. And 540 inches will spool both of those turbos up. Do you have an engineering degree? No, I don't. I have an advertising degree. So I can just make the engineers sound good on paper. Will we get an update on the M90 on the truck? Yeah, after I test it, after I put it back in and try it again. So running a turbo car, would you rather use cast and forged? If I was making under 1,000 horsepower, I would just run the stock bottom end LS stuff, like everybody else does. If you want to spend the money on forged stuff and the motor's already apart and you're going to put forged stuff in it, that also works too. And it's a good idea. They will be stronger, but there are lots of guys making sub 1,000 horsepower stuff on stock bottom ends, but you just put ring gap in it and then put it back together and have the tune correct, and it will last a long time. Are there any affordable 8.1 dry sump systems? I don't know. An R1 and a solid flat car? What's an R1? The motorcycle? Always get forged pistons, except if you're one of the thousands and thousands of people that are out there running at the drag strip that don't do that. What, Ivan, did you find out what it is? Was it a gas fire or something? Carcraft 200-mile-an-hour Fox body. Yeah, that was Kenny Detweiler built that motor. And the guys have run sport bike motors in these Metros before. The problem always with the sport bike stuff is that it makes no torque, so you got to get a big push off the line, and then connecting the power to a transmission is difficult to the drive wheels. That nitrous explosion. Nitrous doesn't usually explode. Are cast pistons that prolific in racing engines? No, anybody that's putting pistons in something doesn't normally do that. I wouldn't do that. I mean, guys use cast pistons and hypertectic pistons in a lot of builds. But if you're trying to make lots of power, you would put a forged piston in. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about guys that go get a motor from the wrecking yard and put ring gap in it and put those pistons back in and go run it, which is an awful lot of LS people running turbo things. That's what the media said. I don't know how a nitrous explosion doesn't level a block. Azim, I've been running my stock bottom end LQ4 twin turbo for 8,000 miles on 7 drag and drive events, which is harder than, those are like dog years. You can really get away with running 990s easy on a stock bottom end. And what's 990s has got to be 1,000 horsepower, right? Nitrous release oxygen. I know they'll separate at temperature, but is an old school Holly Dominator any good? The Street Dominator intake manifold? I don't know that I've ever compared it to anything. Yeah, nitrous is an oxidizer, but I helped design the Keith Black Mopar quench pistons. I can make hybrid techniques work for most builds. Still forge, then design matters. It's very cool. But on that note, it is time to go. But I'll be back in the morning. You guys have a good night, and I will see you guys all tomorrow. Super excited about the Metro. Metro's in the house.